All right, chapter 42, The Convulsionaries of Saint Medard, founded 1731. Saint Medard was the name of a cemetery in Paris wherein was the tomb of a famous I can't say that word, Jansenist, the Deacon Frank Koy de Paris, and it was said that miracles of all descriptions took place there. The first recorded case of convulsions in the St. Medard Cemetery occurred in August 1731. On this subject, Madden tells us the following. The tomb of the Deacon Frank Koy, Francois, became the scene of a wonderful cures and some very remarkable conversions which were reputed miraculous. People who came there, especially afflicted with nervous disorders, appear to have been affected in a singular manner, some with cataleptic, others with hysteric and convulsive symptoms. The convulsionaires exhibited not only occasionally but frequently all the phenomena which are ascribed by mesmerists to animal magnetism, some somnambulism, ecstasies, rapture, submission of the will and the senses to the power of the volition of another person, connected in some way with the dominant idea which possessed their minds at the time of falling into the trance, increased subtlety of thought, quickness of perception, heightened powers of imagination, and vivid, energizing influence fraught with enthusiasm and even eloquence, claims to clairvoyance, to communion with another world, to spirit life. All these phenomena were to be found too, though not all in the same individual, in occasional instances in this epidemic of convulsive theomania. Till the month of August 1731, says Picard, the wonders wrought at the burying place of the Deacon Paris were not accompanied with any considerable difference from those mentioned in Scripture or a classical history. Those who were afflicted with sickness and begged the holy deacon's intercession were laid upon or under his tombstone, which was raised from the ground, and were cured. But in August 1731, God was pleased to work his miracles in a different manner. Violent pains, agitations of the body, extraordinary convulsions were the means by which the sick were healed, not all at once, but gradually. This happened to one Abe Beckeran, 2 Chevalier Follard, an ancient officer in the army, and to several others. The number of people afflicted with convulsions increased so fast, and consequences of the meetings at the tomb appeared or were represented to the king so dangerous that on the 27th of January 1732 he issued an order to shut up the little churchyard belonging to St. Medard's parish, where M. de Paris was buried, and to open it up only when necessary for burials. Some weeks afterwards, the Abe Beckeran was arrested and confined at Saint Lazare and set again at liberty about 3 months after in June. But the miracles and convulsions did not cease upon these oppositions. On the contrary, they daily spread further and gained ground. Towards the end of the year 1732, those who were in convulsions began to foretell what was to happen, to discover secrets, to make speeches, pathetic exhortations, sublime prayers, even those who at other times were wholly unable to perform any such things. Montegaron informs us, there is nothing which the convulsionaires did not undertake to mortify themselves, to break down, and to enfeeble their bodies. The most of those from the time they had convulsions hardly made use of a bed. They laid down with their clothes on, winter and summer, with only one covering, some lying on planks and others on the bare ground, others on logs of wood, and some of them on bars of iron. The fact is, not only the means used for effecting cures were evil in themselves, but many of the leading persons by whom the remedy of the grand succours was administered or superintended were persons of ill repute. Montegaron reckons that 4,000 enthusiasts were employed to kick and to strike without cessation the infirm and all those young girls who begged for the violence of their blows. They were not ashamed to maintain, says Calmel, that it was to be ignorant of pious and charitable duties, not to obey under these circumstances the desires of the convulsionaires, whilst the reasonable Janists repeated aloud that it was only a frantic madness which could suggest to these young women to encounter such dangers and make an excuse for the criminal barbarity of those who had the audacity to boast of the advantages of so scandalous a mode of mortification, or rather martyrdom, and the wickedness to consent to take on them the office of executioners. An observer has recounted that a young girl named Janine Muller had insisted upon their administering to her as many as 100 blows with an iron and the stomach, and that a brother who had one day given her 60 had caused a breach in a wall at the 25th blow, and then went on repeating the same violence on her person which had been previously inflicted upon her. Montegaron, acknowledging that he was the person designated the brother who inflicted the blows, adds, "The convulsionaire continued to complain that the blows that I was giving her were so slight that they did not bring her any relief, and she forced me again to put the iron into the hands of a large, strong man. This person in no way sparred her, having seen by the proof that I had already given that he could not administer two violent blows. He bastinode her in so frightful a manner, always in the hollow of the stomach, that they shook the wall against which she was leaning. The convulsionaire made them immediately give her, with all their force, the 100 lashes that she had already asked for, counting as nothing those 60 which I had already given her. A physician, hearing an account of these things, maintained that they could not be true, as according to him it was physically impossible. He objected, amongst other things, that the flexibility and the softness of the skin and flesh, and all the other fibrous parts of which the skin and the flesh are essentially composed, are incompatible with a force and resistance so extraordinary. They allowed him to make an anatomical demonstration, to set forth all his proofs, and in the end, for reply, they said to him, 'Come and verify the facts.' He hastened to do so, and at the very sight he was struck with astonishment. Scarcely believing his eyes, he begs to administer himself the succors. They immediately put into his hands the iron instruments, the strongest and the fittest to beat effectually. He spared nothing. He struck with the greatest violence. He thrust into the flesh the instrument with which he was armed. He made it penetrate beyond the surface. Notwithstanding which, the convulsionaire laughed at all his vain efforts. All the blows which he gave her only served to do her good, without leaving the slightest impression, the least trace, or any vestige whatever, not only in the flesh, but even on the skin itself. Among other duly attested cases of torture in which the convulsionaires submitted, the most astonishing are those of crucifixion and burning. Like the fakirs of India, these people seem to have achieved invulnerability and the power to defy nature. Science, so far, has still to find a satisfactory explanation of this phase of phenomena. Hippolyte Blanc, another writer, records the following observations. The girl Sonette, nicknamed the Salamander, was seen to rest in the flames for 36 minutes on one occasion without sustaining any burns. The mania of the convulsionaires broke out at St. Médard in the spring of 1731. The royal order, which caused the cemetery of St. Médard to be closed and the pretended miracles to cease, was issued in January 1732. In 1733, the Duc d'Anjou, the infant son of Queen Marie Leczinska and Louis XV, fell a victim to a Jansenist plot which caused his death. In Phantasmata, already quoted, we read further. From 1732 onward, the delirium of theomania began to manifest itself more signally than it had hitherto done, by ecstatic phenomena and cataleptic symptoms, by predictions and pretensions to miraculous operations, in the same way as the Calvinist convulsionaires progressed in their fanaticism in the Cevennes when they were inferred with by the civil authorities, and many of their chiefs were imprisoned, as those of the Janus of Saint Bernard were immured in the Bastille and the Bicêtre. The plea of the pretext of persecution and the consequent assemblage of the convulsionaires of Paris in secret occurred greatly and rapidly to augment the evils which it was intended to prevent by those governmental measures. And those evils were not effectually repressed during the following 10 years, nor were they totally then put a stop to. It was of no avail that in the year 1762 the Grand Secours was forbidden by Act of Parliament. The insanity of the convulsionaires, says Hecker, lasted without interruption until the year 1790. The convulsionaires of Saint Medard and the Camisards were only manifestations of Gnosticism such as have existed in the esoteric branches of various sects, religious, and secret societies ever since the days of paganism. Among others can be mentioned the Albigenses, the Moravian Brethren, the Anabaptists, the Baptists, the Quakers, the Waldenists, the Shakers, the Methodists, etc. Their name is Legion. Sects rise, sects fall or fade away, but God remains.